Welcome to the Betfair Automation Series, Episode 3. Today we're joined by Bruno to discuss modelling. So Bruno is a modelling expert and he specialises in Greyhound Racing predictive prices. Welcome, Bruno.
Thank you.
How are you going today?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you, Ben?
Good. No, I'm very excited about this. So Bruno comes from a software developer background and started out, how many years ago on the Betfair Exchange?
It's been 12 years actually, yeah.
12
years building models on Greyhound Racing and placing bets on Betfair.
Wow, and when was the first time, how long were you betting on greyhounds before you went to a greyhound race?
Probably be trading the greyhounds for 2 or 3 years before I went to an actual race actually.
Wow.
And the first time was with Betfair.
It always amazes other people when we tell them there's successful customers out there who just use the data. They don't necessarily have to be an expert in greyhounds or horse racing or whatever their sport is. So today, I suppose we'll start off with what is it like you build predictive racing or ratings? What is a rated price?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about rated price, this is actually the price that a bookmaker is willing to accept when you want to place a bet. Yeah. And usually they come up with a rated price based on the historical data and statistics that are available to them. Anything about the weather conditions, statistics about the venue, the form of the horse, statistics about players. And they will use that information to make an assessment and come up with a price that they are willing to accept when someone wants to place a bet.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of variables that go into creating a rated price then.
Exactly, yes. So you can take pretty much everything into account. So usually you want to focus on specific sports or markets that you have an interest in, something that you can understand, and try to find some interesting data where you think you can have an edge, where you can do better than the market or the bookmakers, and create your own rated price based on that.
So what, I suppose, with finding the data, how do you, what things do you take into account to create that? You've touched on some of them, but yeah. I suppose for a greyhound race, what are the things that you'd look at?
So data collection takes a considerable amount of time. So you need to collect the data from different sources, whether it's public or sometimes you have to pay to get access to some private data. And then you need to constitute your own database, you need to cleanse the data, make sure you don't have any data missing. You also need to pre-process the data to normalize the value, to make them usable by a model. A good example is if you check the finish time for dogs at a specific venue on the track and distance. If I tell you a dog ran that race in 31 seconds, you don't know if it's good or if it's bad, if it's average. So you need to create a scale for all the finish time, and then based on that you can analyze the time of the dog and say if it's good or bad and give that information to your model. So you need to normalize the data just to extract the value and identify patterns within your data.
Yes, I imagine that the track times or the race times vary for each dog for different tracks with the bend in the track, the surface of the track.
Yes, this is based on the characteristics of the track. So even if you have a track or if you have two different tracks on the same distance, the winning time or average winning time can be different by 1 or even 2 seconds sometimes.
Wow.
Based on the structure of the track, the bends, how many turns you have.
Yep.
So many variables to take into account.
I suppose the weather as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The weather, if the track is fast or slow as well, will have an incidence on the speed of the dogs.
So I imagine that there's some tracks that, I suppose less variables, like a straight track, but there's only a couple of straight tracks, I think, in Australia. That's probably another thing to be aware of, is it?
Yeah, it's not that many tracks which are straight, but yeah, that's something very interesting to take into account as well. The different characteristics of tracks, and you need to include that in your models. So it makes it interesting.
Oh, there's a lot to take in. So when you finally come up with your rated price, how do you place a bet? What do you look at?
So you want to identify value with your bets. So usually when you start creating your own rated price, you want to compare them with the market. So find different bookmakers or different betting platforms just to compare the price between all of them and find where you can have the most value out of your bet. So you have to compare your own rated price with the different markets. And what I like actually is to go on Betfair because usually the price are a bit better than other platforms, but you can also back and lay a selection.
Yep.
So if you see that the price is undervalued, you want to lay the selection, which is something you can do only on Betfair and not on other typical betting platform.
Yeah, definitely one of the unique things about Betfair is the ability to place a lay bet on a selection. And so when you're doing your research and analysis, you come up with your rated price. How do you know once you've identified value bets? Is there anything else you have to be aware of in terms of information that you might not have that the market has, that sort of thing, or is that sort of later in the process that you do that?
So that's a very good question. It's very hard actually to realize that something is missing in your data, in your model. The only way to understand that is to calculate the difference between your rated prices and the market. And if the discrepancy is too high, probably you want to have a threshold where you say, okay, my probabilities are completely off compared to the market, so I may be wrong, so I don't want to take position, I don't want to place bets.
Yep.
So you have to find a sweet spot where your probabilities align with the market, but you still find value, but probably not too much value, because it means you're probably wrong.
Yep. So yeah, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly.
So I suppose other things like you've identified a value bet that's not too good a value. Managing your bankroll, how do you do that with, or what do you take into account there?
So first you have to be comfortable with the amount that you bet, because obviously you can lose everything. So you have to be comfortable with you losing the entire bank. You don't want that to happen, obviously, so you need to manage that better and just place a bet which will be a fraction of your bank. What most people will do is to place a smaller bet on long shots. So if the odds are very high, the outcome of the event is less likely. So if you want to back a selection with a price of 100, it means there is a 1% chance of this to happen and to win.
Yep.
It means you will have to place a lot of bets that will lose before you win.
Yep.
So your bankroll must have the ability to accept that. So to go down and then go up all of a sudden. And if you bet on smaller odds, you will have less variance.
Yep.
So it's a bit more predictive and you will have less swings in your bankroll.
So did you start out betting on the shorter odds, the higher probability horse selections, greyhounds, or did you just bet on all of them and take that into account in terms of like long odds and short odds?
So initially when I started, yes, I had a limit. I wouldn't bet on anything above a price of 20. That was my hard limit.
Yeah.
And that was 12 years ago when I started with a small bankroll. And I had difficulties dealing with variance, like everyone does, I think, at the beginning. Now I bet at also long shots. I back and I lay selections. It comes down to having a model with better performances and being comfortable as well with the variance.
Yeah, being able to judge when it is positive or negative variance and having ways to measure that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's part of the game to have some period of time where I will be losing money, and some other where I will be winning a lot more than expected. So it comes down to variance, and yeah, it takes a bit of time to accept it and to cope with variance.
So yeah, I think that's for a lot of customers. That's definitely true. Being aware of it and being able to cope with it as well. In terms of like staying informed, what's your ongoing process like in terms of taking information and if you identify an issue with your model in terms of you think there's missing data or there's something in terms of your a discrepancy between your ratings and the actual odds. What sort of how do you go about searching out the information to find out what you're missing?
So that's a constant exercise actually to make sure the models are up to date. So first, even if the data doesn't change much, you want to retrain your models with the latest data just to keep them up to date and try to keep the performances stable. Another thing that happens often is because I collect data from public sources, websites or APIs, sometimes the format will change, meaning I need to update my data collection process just to collect the data in the same way. What also happens with a public website, sometimes the data is entered manually and you may have invalid data that I need to find in the system and try to automate the cleansing of the data, or even sometimes just discard races entirely because of invalid times or invalid distance for a track. And that will create invalid data that will have an impact on the performances of the model.
So yeah, there's a lot of cleaning and I suppose manual work involved. Even though it is automation and building an automated model, you still have to dig in.
It's a lot of manual review of the data, make sure everything works as expected. There are many tools actually where you can automatically analyze the data to make sure the distribution of your variables and inputs are the same, and you can get an alert if that distribution changes. You can also do that for your training data and compare that with the live data as well and make sure we've got the same distribution between data sets, and that's very useful.
And do you have to come up with specific rules for how you treat outliers, that sort of thing? You know, if you've got a dog that weighs 10 times more than any other dog, do you think it's either a big dog or it's most likely an outlier?
Yeah, so outliers are always an issue with models. So you have different techniques to find outliers, but the question is, what do you do with this outlier? Do you want to actually crop the value to be within certain boundaries, or do you want to discard the entire value and replace with the average value of the parameters that you have? There is no one size fits all. It's really up to you. Try to find different things, or you can even leave it to your model to decide what the model wants to do with this.
I can imagine,
so you have to try different combinations, yes.
And whenever, with all research, dealing with outliers, there seems to be different approaches to take.
Yes, it depends also on your modeling techniques and what type of algorithm you will be using with machine learning, because different models will use outliers or treat outliers differently as well.
So Bruno, we've got to this point. How do I make my own rated prices, like create my own model to then create my own rated prices?
So a good way to start is to use what we call Elo rating, which are quite popular, I think in tennis, golf, soccer, I think. We've got different applications for that. So basically it's calculating the relative skill levels of players in a zero-sum game. You also have some implementations supporting multiplayer, which are quite useful for racing. And I use that for greyhounds. Can also be applied to horse racing, when you can have N runners or N selections on the market, and you can then compare them. So the way it works with Elo rating, you will have points that you exchange between the winners and losers in an event. So the winners will kind of steal points from the losers, and you can establish a ranking between your runners this way.
And then if a lower ranked team, or for instance, if say the World Cup, the top ranked team, if they were beaten by the lower ranked team, the lower ranked team would get a lot more points for being a higher ranked team than vice versa.
Yes. So it's based on the likelihood of an event occurring. So if you have an underdog winning, there will still more points from the opponent.
Yeah. And we do also have some more detail on Elo modeling at the link below on our automation hub. And as well as that, we're about to go into machine learning. We've got Bruno's tutorial on how to build your own Greyhound model. The link is below with the detailed tutorial. So what is machine learning, Bruno, at a high level?
So machine learning is a subfield of artificial intelligence. And that gives the computers ability to learn without explicitly being programmed to do something. So what you want is to collect data, generate a data set, and tell your model that you want to find a specific target. And the model is like a massive equation that is trying to optimize as much as possible to get as close as possible to your target.
Yeah. So the machine learning does a lot of the work for you in terms of utilizing like gives you the ability to utilize large data sets.
Yes, it will analyze the data and extract the value in the best possible way. So you don't have to go and create your own formula yourself. You give that to the computer.
Brilliant.
And the computer comes back with a solution.
So yep, takes away a lot of the hard work, makes it a bit easier.
Yeah.
With different parts of a building machine learning model, you've got feature engineering. Did you want to touch on that?
Yes. So feature engineering is where you need to understand the data that you collect. So once you've got your database with all the data, you have to extract the value from the data. You need to identify patterns. You have to find a relationship between the data by creating features that the model can understand. So that's where you have to put a lot of effort to engineer the best feature, because that is where you can use your brain to actually understand what is the value and try to beat the competition, because you understand the data better than anyone else.
So that's where I suppose the individual person building the model has the ability to have some influence.
Yes, yeah. And everyone wants to find an edge of the data. So you don't need to find an edge on every market, every race, or every game you want to bet on. You can just focus on specific patterns or specific edge cases where you think you can do better than the competition.
Great. And so when do you get to, next point is labeling?
So labeling, that's based on the target that you want. So depending on what you want to bet on, for example, for Greyhound, I will bet on the win and the place market. So for a win market, you have one winner and all losers. So you have one label, which is win for one dog. For place markets, you can have 2 or 3 dogs placed in Australia and New Zealand. That makes it a bit more tricky actually to model, because you can have the probabilities. Some probabilities for a place market won't be 1, could be either 2 or 3. Yeah. So you have to implement different types of models and different labels. Same thing when it comes to sport. If you bet on soccer, you can bet on the team winning, losing, or on the draw. So you've got 3 different outcomes. But you can also find markets where you want to bet on the number of goals difference between the teams. Yeah. And you've got different markets with different targets. And that's where you can define, even from the same input of data, have a different target or different label, and you can train different models of the same data.
So it becomes more complex the more labels you have, or the different markets. You might be an expert in one sport or racing code, but you're trying to bet into different markets. It becomes a bit harder.
Yes, but it's fun as well to bet on different markets, and also it helps with variance, because you can have a different outcome. Like if you take a soccer game, the game is played once, but you could make a profit finding who is going to win the game, but you could have make a loss on the number of total goals scored, for instance, or could be the opposite. And the more markets you cover for the same event, and less variance you will have.
Okay, yeah. So in some ways, it's covering off for the chance of an anomaly by spreading out over those multiple markets. Okay, great. And then with your model selection, you've got different types of machine learning models. So I know in your tutorial you cover and show up in detail how to check the model with these different types of, or how to check your predictions with the different types of models. Do you want to touch on those? Yeah,
so there are many different modeling techniques. So here we can talk about classification models more than regression. So in a nutshell, regression model, you want to predict a continuous value. An example that we find commonly is predicting the price of a house. Could be also if you want to predict the speed of a horse on a race, for instance. but most of the time we want to predict the probability of an event to occur. So that's why we want to use classification.
Yeah.
So classification models, you've got different types. One of the most common ones will be logistic regression, where the output of your model will be a probability between 0 and 1.
Yep.
So you just input all your parameters, train your model, gives you something between 0 and 1. That will be for one team, one horse in a race. So then you have to calculate the same thing for all the different selections and renormalize your probabilities. So the sum of the probabilities will be 1.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, you know if something's rated at 110% chance that there's something wrong with your model or your
Exactly,
data?
yes. So you need to double check what you're doing. There are also different classification models. Another common one would be decision trees, where you build a tree and based on the value of your inputs, for every node in your tree, it will take a different branch. So it will evaluate one of the parameters and decide to go this way or this way, and does it for all the parameters and try to find values or group values to try different paths in your tree. And the outcome will be a probability.
And which type of model do you use most commonly? Is there one in particular?
There is one which is quite common, is a random forest that I haven't used for a while. And this one is built on the decision trees. It's the same as decision trees, but it takes an ensemble of trees to average the possible outcome and then give you a probability based on that. So it's a bit more efficient than decision tree because it's kind of voting for the best possible answer. And there is less overfitting as well with decision tree.
So would you recommend that's where someone new to modeling should start?
Yeah, random forest is pretty good actually. It's a good start and you get very good results.
Yep.
And the last type of model I wanted to mention are GBM, gradient boosting machines, which is very popular. A lot on the Kaggle competitions, you see winners using GBMs because they provide very good results. Fairly simple to implement and to train.
Yep, okay.
So very solid model.
So yeah, there's a lot out there, and as I said, you can check out in the Automation Hub tutorial that Bruno wrote a bit more detail about the different types of models. Then you've got model training, so where you're splitting your data into training and testing sets. Did you want to go into that?
Correct. So when you train your model, you want to have some data that you don't use to train your model, that your model will have never seen, and you use this data set to validate the probabilities generated by your model. So what you want is to train specific data that will come up with the performance of the model, like the accuracy of your model. And if you run the model through the test data set, you want to have an accuracy quite similar to your training accuracy.
And so with your with the amount of data you use, say you had 3 years of historical data, what sort of split do you use for?
It's quite common to use a split 20-80%, so 80% for training and 20% for testing and validation. For my models, usually I use 6 years worth of data to train a model and 1 year to test and validate the model.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that's that breakdown. Do you find that 6 years gives you is going to be more accurate than say a shorter amount of time, even though some of the data, like the data from 5 or 6 years ago, might trends may have changed?
Things may have changed, but I find it better actually to use about 5-6 years of data. Seems to be the sweet spot, where it doesn't take too long to train the model and gives me the best results.
Okay.
Also, when you work on a new model, you don't want to compute or train on all the data that you have because it's quite expensive. So if you experiment with a new modeling technique, you want to create a simple model and train on a subset of data just to make sure that everything works and that your model can generalize on the data and converges towards the solution. If your model seems to be stuck and doesn't learn, there is something wrong. So you don't need to train for hours and hours to come to that conclusion.
Okay. So yeah. So make sure, yeah, that you don't have to leave your computer there running for a couple of days and then find out that you got nothing out of it.
Yeah.
Find out more quickly.
Exactly. Yes.
And next you had back testing in terms of should people take into account with back testing? Tips?
That's an interesting one. So once you've got your model giving you probabilities, you want to understand if your model is profitable or not before you start trading with this model live. So with Betfair, you can have access to historical odds for markets, which is very useful. So I can use a model that I've trained on the last 5 or 6 years of data, and that hasn't seen any data for this year. And I can replay all the market odds for the last 6 months, let's say, and see how my model performs against this. If I see that my model makes a profit over several months, that's a positive sign, meaning my model can make a profit on the long run.
Yep. Okay. And if anyone watching the video, any Betfair Australia, New Zealand customers, we can give them or share access to historical data. So feel free to reach out at the links below. And then next step, we've got deploy and monitor.
Yes. So once you've proved that your model can make a profit, hopefully, you want to start trading live. So we'll start with, you have to productionize your model in a sense. So you need to have it running, make sure it runs, it doesn't crash. You probably find a few bugs on the way that you need to fix. You probably want to have some alerts if nothing responds and take actions.
Yep.
And one very important thing, you need to have a big red button to stop trading at any time. Especially when you bring a model for the first time and start trading, it can go wrong.
Yeah, so don't leave it running while you go out.
So have a way to pull the plug at any time from your phone, from anywhere, so you don't have to be in front of the laptop if something goes wrong.
That sounds like very wise advice. Like yes. I can imagine that if you're, especially customers new to building automated programs, that if they're not at their computer trying to stop it, or if they haven't built something, it could be very hard to press stop or
yes.
hit the big red button. So making sure that they think ahead and build something in there.
Yes, it's very important, yeah.
So next we've got measuring the accuracy of a machine learning model. What steps do we go through there to measure the accuracy?
So when you train and test your model, you have different metrics you want to monitor. Most of the time you will check the accuracy of a model, which is how often is your model right. So if you want to predict for Greyhound Racing which dog is going to win the race, it will give you the percentages of time your predicted favorite wins the race.
Yeah, so as opposed to measuring the accuracy of your rated prices necessarily across the ones that didn't win, it's actually measuring how often you predict the winner. Is that correct?
Exactly, yes. So this is a way to measure the performance of your model, but you want to measure that and compare it with something. So what I do is to use BSP as a reference. So Betfair starting price is a very good indicator of the probabilities of a dog to win a race for win place market, and same thing for all the markets. So it's a very powerful tool that I use to calculate the accuracy of BSP, for instance, and compare with my model to see where I'm at compared to BSP.
Yeah.
If I get close to where BSP is at, it's a very good sign. It's very hard to be better than BSP, but if you get close enough, you're in a good position.
And I've heard that from a lot of customers over the years that if you can beat BSP, well, you don't hear of many customers beating BSP.
Yeah, it's very hard.
Now, you mentioned a term, F1 score.
Yes. So especially for racing, when you calculate the accuracy, in Greyhound Racing, you have only one dog winning the race. So we call that the class imbalanced labels, because you have one winner, 7 losers.
Yep.
So when you calculate the accuracy just for the winner, the accuracy is not that accurate, in a sense. So you have a tool which is called F1 score, which is a way to accurately calculate the accuracy on class imbalanced data sets.
Ah, okay. So nothing to do with Formula One racing.
No, nothing to do with that.
How do you make sure that your probabilities are correct, or the accuracy of them?
So yeah, this refers back to how well a model is calibrated. So if I say this dog has 30% chances of winning, is it actually 30% or is it more 25%, 35%, maybe 50%? It's very hard to know. So what I do is to create calibration curves. So for all the probabilities that I have, I will create bins, maybe 100 bins with a 1% chance of winning for all the bins. I take all the probabilities and place them into bins, and do these bins, and then calculate how many times selections within that bins have won the race. So if I go to the bin with 20% chances of winning, if I go and do the average for all the selections in that bin, and it gives me 20% exactly, it means my model is well calibrated.
Okay.
If I get something like 15%, it means my model is a bit off, so I need to rework the distribution of the outputs.
And you go through that in detail in some sample code in your tutorial on the Automation Hub on building a Greyhound model.
Yes, this has been covered, explaining how to do this and how to recalibrate your model as well, in case your model is underconfident or overconfident, which is quite common.
And being able to see that visually, it really helps, I think, doesn't it? Like seeing that output and being able to look at it visually to see where your model needs adjusting or calibration.
Yeah, it's a great tool to explain your model and to understand it a bit better, and also to compare with different types of modeling techniques, which one will be overfitting, underfitting, have a different distribution of the outputs to recalibrate them. And sometimes you even want to combine different models just to overcome the shortcoming of some of the model.
That segues well into our next topic, which was overfitting and versus underfitting. We'd already talked about splitting our model into training and testing. Mm-hmm. What do underfitting and overfitting mean relative to like when you're testing your model?
So when you train a model, usually you start with a simple model with a few parameters just to validate that the data is correct and the model can learn from the data. When you have a model which is too simple, most of the time it underfits. So it doesn't have the full capability to learn everything from the data. And when you have your training data set and test the data set and compare the accuracy, they will be quite close together, meaning that your model is not complex enough, or you can add more parameters or more inputs to learn better. The opposite is having a model that is overfitting. And usually it's the case if you see your model, the training data set, the accuracy will be really good. But on the test data set, the accuracy seems to be quite bad. And over time, you can see that the accuracy for your training model is improving, but the test data set is degrading over time. And that's a sign that your model is probably too complex and is just remembering the data it has seen more than learning from the data.
Okay. And which one is, or for you, is more common, underfitting or overfitting?
Overfitting is quite common, especially with complex models. So you want your model to overfit just a bit, because if it doesn't overfit, it means it has a capability to learn more with more parameters. So you really need to find that limit where the model is complex enough so it learns pretty much everything it can, but not too much.
So it's finding that sweet spot.
Exactly,
and,
yes.
Or the threshold, I suppose.
Yes.
And is it trying to push past that threshold to overfitting and go, oh, that's overfitting, take one step back?
Yes.
In simplified terms?
So you have different ways to counter overfitting. You can try to regularize your models. So it will penalize the model if there are some weights or biases which are a bit off compared to the rest. So you want all the inputs to be taken into account. You can also use larger data sets. Yeah. So just add more data to your model for the training. But that's a bit it's not cost efficient if you do that. So you want to do that wisely and not just try to train your models on 20 years of data, for instance.
How much data is too much or not enough? Like 20 years of data is too much?
I would say it's never too much, but it just gets very expensive. So as I said, it's better to start with a small model and a small data set, just to validate your approach, and then train your model with a larger data set. Obviously, it takes more time. It's really linear. If you double the size of your data set, it will take twice more time to train your model, basically.
So it's not only the cost of accessing the data, buying the data, it's also the cost of storing it and the time it takes to process it.
Processing the data, yes, because you want to have a short cycle time. So every time you train your model, you want to have a feedback rapidly. You want to wait a couple of days to get a feedback, because that's too slow, in my opinion. And you will lose momentum if you try new features or new technique. You really want to get that feedback as soon as possible to know if you're heading in the right direction.
If you look at recalibrating, how long does it take you at the moment? What do you see as an ideal time for you?
So when I train a model, depending on the types of model I train, can take 2 to 16 hours roughly. So it takes 16 hours if I train a model on a full data set.
Yeah.
And that's quite expensive, so it's not something I try to do that less often, maybe once a month, like a full retrain of a model, and then try different techniques on small models or small data sets until I'm happy with something. I will use more data to train a model and then backtest the model and validate. So I have different checkpoints on the way before doing the full training of a model.
Yeah, I can imagine over time you've built up so much data that it becomes, you have to build in these steps to in terms of your process, otherwise it's just too costly.
Exactly, yeah. You want to be efficient as well when you do that.
And so with backtesting your model, say you've got you introduce a new feature to your model, do you take a step back with your staking strategy, or do you have a strategy you use in terms of for your new model, or what would you recommend to people starting out with what sort of staking strategy they use?
So if I were to build a new model, I'll probably have a different staking strategy and place very small bets just to validate that model. Because even if you backtest thoroughly a model, you don't necessarily have the same results when you're trading live. You can have some small differences. So you really want to validate live before going full speed and start betting with a bigger volume. And you can also have different models trading in parallel and compare the results and then pick the best model.
And I can imagine things like the stake size can influence the results of the model as you gradually scale up. That could influence the returns that you're getting.
It does, yes. Also, you can have your models competing against each other, because I could take different positions on the market, and you'll be actually trading your positions between your models if they think the other one is wrong.
I can imagine they could get quite confusing in terms of trying to validate your results.
Yes.
Why don't high-odds staking strategies scale as well? With liquidity, what are your tips there?
That's true, especially on Greyhound markets, because the liquidity at high odds, so in the hundreds and above, you don't have a lot of money available on these selections. So if I place a bet at this price, it may push prices around. So if I start backing at 100 or above, the price will go lower. If I lay that election, it will go higher. So when I place a bet at this price, I bet against myself in a sense.
Yeah, okay.
So it's very hard to get a large bet matched at a high price. So the recommendation would be to place smaller bets. So break it down into several small bets and try to place them at different time on the exchange. And even place some of it at BSP as well, where you can have a more predictable value in the end.
And do you use limit BSP bets, or do you just place to take whatever the starting price is?
So I place my bets mostly on the exchange and a few bets at BSP with a limit.
Yeah. Okay. So
always with a limit, so I know which price I will get.
Yeah. So that just in case you accidentally push the price down, and
Exactly. Yeah.
you might be taking.
I don't want to impact my returns, obviously. Yes.
No, that makes total sense. And with data leakage is another thing to consider. You use BSP as part of that process.
So I don't use a BSP as an input of my model or for the market I'm betting on, because BSP is the values that you get after the market has started.
Yep.
So yes, BSP is not a value that you can have as an input of your model, because it's not available at the time that the market starts. But you can use historical BSPs for previous events, like for the form of a runner. You can have the results, the time, and the BSP for that market at the time it was run. Same thing for any kind of a racing or sport event.
Yes, so there is a field in the API as well as on the website with projected SP, but that's only updated every 30 seconds, and it might give you an indication, but it's not going to give you it's not actually going to give you what the starting price will be.
I don't think so, but I don't use this one. I cannot say yes. But that's an important point, actually, to make sure that you don't include data in your model that is not available at the time that you want to bet when you bet live. So it's easy to create a data set and using data that is not yet available and put it as an input of your model, but you cannot use it in a live environment.
So you need to be sure that you're separating it out when you're building your model, so you're not including values like that.
Exactly, yes. I've done that mistake several times. An example is for when I was calculating the Elo rating for dogs. I was also including the last race, the one I wanted to predict, in the Elo rating. And this was giving me awesome results. The model was performing very, very nicely, and it was too good to be true. And when I tried it live, it went down entirely. And so, yeah, okay, I've got something wrong. And I had to do some analysis of the data to understand the issues that I was having. So data leakage, including data not yet available as your input. And usually the model performs much better than it should.
So again, the too good to be true.
Exactly, yes.
So that covers off data leakage. Is there anything else in modelling that you think we need to cover today, Bruno?
I think we've covered a lot of things already, so it's probably it for today.
Oh, great. Well, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your time with our customers.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to catch up with you. And thank you all for watching the video. Please keep your eye out for more in the automation video series, and you can check below for links to the Automation Hub and also our email if you want to reach out.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.